Everyone likes to assume they know the people who live next to them. You see them your whole life, exchange small talk, and that familiarity makes it easy to overlook anything unusual. I've lived in my neighborhood forever, and so have most of my neighbors. It's a close-knit community where everyone is friendly and open. Across the street lives an old woman whose husband passed away before I was born. She had no children, but she was friends with my late grandmother and well-liked by everyone. Despite that, I never had many interactions with her. I was a shy kid, and she mostly kept to herself. One day, on my way home from school, I saw her struggling with some grocery bags and offered to help. At first, she flinched, startled by my presence, but then she nodded, relieved to have the weight taken off her shoulders. We didn't talk much on the way to her house. I wasn't sure what to say, and she seemed too cautious to ask me anything beyond my age and where I went to school. It felt like an ordinary moment, nothing worth mentioning to anyone. But over the next few weeks, I started noticing her more. Every morning when I left for school, she was by her window watching. She would wave at me with a small, tight-lipped smile, one that looked forced, almost as if it pained her. At first, I brushed it off as a harmless routine, but then her behavior started to shift. I began seeing her in unusual places, peeking through her blinds, only to disappear the second I noticed her. One night, I glanced out my own window and saw her standing outside, staring at my house in a trance-like state. She wasn't waving. She wasn't smiling. Just watching. One morning, she did something different. Instead of her usual stiff wave, she gestured frantically for me to come over. Her bony fingers trembled, her sunken eyes darting back and forth, as if making sure no one else was watching. I hesitated before crossing the street, my backpack weighing heavier than usual. As soon as I stepped onto her porch, she grabbed my wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong for someone so frail. Up close, I noticed how thin she had become. Her skin stretched paper-thin over her knuckles. The scent of old books and stale lavender clung to her, and her breathing came in quick, shallow bursts. "You need to be careful," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Someone is watching." At first, I thought she meant herself, that maybe she was finally aware of how unsettling she had become. But then her cloudy eyes flicked toward the street, filled with something raw like panic, maybe even terror. I turned to follow her gaze. Nothing. Just the familiar cracked pavement and the same row of quiet houses. "Who?" I asked, my voice barely above a breath. She didn't answer right away. Her fingers dug into my arm, nails pressing deep enough to sting. Then, in a voice so soft that it barely reached my ears, she said, "He waits." In the following days, she would call out to me whenever I passed by, her voice barely above a whisper. She never said hello anymore. Instead, she clutched at my sleeve, her bony fingers cold even through the fabric, and asked strange, frantic questions. "Did you hear anything last night?" Her milky eyes darted past me, scanning the street like she expected someone to be lurking just out of sight. "Have you seen a man in a dark coat?" Her breath came fast and shallow, as if just saying the words took something from her. I tried to answer, but she was already shaking her head, muttering to herself, "Do you always lock your doors?" This time, she gripped my wrist so tightly I nearly flinched. Her nails bit into my skin, and I realized she wasn't just scared. She was desperate. I told myself she was just lonely, that maybe age was making her lose her grip on reality. But the way she spoke, the way she watched me with those wide, unblinking eyes, made it feel like she truly believed every word. And then, around that time, I started noticing him. An unfamiliar man in the neighborhood. He didn't belong here. He was always walking alone, looking around as if searching for something. He didn't seem threatening, just out of place. When I mentioned him to my parents, they shrugged it off. Probably visiting someone, they said. But one evening, the old woman was waiting for me on her porch, visibly shaken. She said she knew I had seen him too. "He's not from here," she whispered. "He watches. He waits. You need to stay away." The fear in her eyes was so intense that for a moment, I believed her. That night, as I stayed up late studying, my phone buzzed. It was her number. I hesitated but answered. At first, there was nothing but silence. Then, in a trembling whisper, she asked, "Are you awake?" Before I could respond, she hung up. A few days later, I saw the man again. But this time, he wasn't just wandering. He was standing on the old woman's porch, talking to her. I hesitated, my heart pounding, but I had to know what was going on. When I finally approached them, I learned the truth. He was her nephew. He had recently moved nearby and had been checking in on her because she was struggling with paranoia. She refused to get help, convinced someone was after her. She was terrified of everyone, including her own family. All this time, I thought I was part of some mystery. But in the end, it was just something sad. Even now, I wonder, did she truly believe what she was saying? Or was there a part of her that knew she was losing herself but couldn't stop the fear from taking over? Moving here was supposed to be a fresh start. Finally, on my own, I was ready to take on the world. The house wasn't much, a small 1-bedroom, 1-bath, but it meant independence. It was mine. The first time I met him was nothing special, just an ordinary neighborly introduction. I was tossing the trash when he came over with a smile that seemed just a little too wide, like he had rehearsed it. "Hi, I'm Jacob," he said, extending a hand. He told me he'd lived in the area most of his life. His handshake was firm, his gaze steady. There was a certain charm to him, a handsomeness that made me feel both flattered and uncomfortable, but I brushed it off. He was just a nice guy, a good neighbor. It wasn't long after that interaction that I started to feel something unsettling, an anxiety that wasn't quite right. My friends told me it was just nerves from living alone for the first time. I wanted to believe them, but the feeling never went away. It only grew worse. At first, it was small, easy to dismiss. My keys weren't where I left them. The bedroom door, which I always made sure was closed at night, was ajar in the morning. I convinced myself I was just forgetful, but it kept happening. Despite my creeping unease, I found myself getting closer to Jacob. He was helpful, always around when I needed something fixed or an extra hand. He seemed to always pop up at the right moment, like the universe was sending him as my guardian angel. One evening, he came over to fix a leak in my bathroom. As usual, he showed up with that easy smile, his toolbox in hand, his jeans worn and sleeves rolled up, to reveal the strong forearms that always made me feel uneasy in a way I couldn't put my finger on. After he left, I decided to bake him a batch of cookies, thinking it was a nice gesture for all his help. As I mixed the dough, I felt the sinking feeling again, the certainty that someone was watching. I froze for a moment, my hands hovering over the mixing bowl. Was it the silence of the house, or was it something more? I told myself it was just my imagination. I checked the yard and the windows, but there was nothing out of the ordinary. Yet the discomfort lingered. Days passed, and I found myself spiraling, second-guessing everything. Was I losing my mind? I barely slept, my thoughts racing at night, wondering if someone was lurking outside my window, waiting. One night, it became unbearable. I woke up gasping, my heart hammering in my chest. The darkness felt thick, suffocating. That awful, gut-wrenching certainty returned. I wasn't alone. My bedroom door was wider than usual, the dim glow of the streetlights casting long, eerie shadows down the hallway. My breath caught in my throat as I strained to listen. At first, there was nothing. Silence. Then I heard it. Soft footsteps, slow, deliberate, creeping toward me. My whole body went rigid. I reached for my phone, but before I could even unlock it, the footsteps stopped. The stillness was worse. It felt like the calm before a storm, like I was prey waiting for a predator. Then, a voice. Jacob's voice. "Are you okay?" he asked, his tone too casual for the situation. "I saw your lights on and thought I'd check on you." My pulse spiked. My lights weren't on. I had turned them off hours ago. I asked him how he got inside. There was a pause, seemed a beat too long. Then he chuckled, as if it was no big deal. "You left the back door open again. I told you to be more careful." But I hadn't left the door open. I never used it. I never even went back there. My thoughts were racing, the pieces falling together, the misplaced keys, the door ajar, the strange feeling of being watched. It wasn't my imagination. I forced myself to sound calm, telling him I was fine and that he should go. There was another long pause. For a second, I thought he wasn't going to leave. But then I heard him turn and walk away. The front door clicked shut behind him. I rushed to grab my keys, but they weren't where I had left them. Panic surged through me as I turned toward the front door. It was still locked from the inside. My stomach dropped. The door hadn't been opened. I didn't know what Jacob had planned, but I knew I didn't want to find out. I grabbed my coat, unlocked the door, and ran. I didn't stop until I saw a police officer near the station. The search didn't turn up anything. They couldn't find him. It's been years since that night, but I still get the feeling that I'm not alone. Sometimes when I'm in the quiet of my house, I feel the weight of someone's gaze, and I can't shake the feeling that he's out there, watching.